Merci.
Ça a démarré.
Bonjour à tous. Nous avons le grand honneur ce soir de pouvoir parler à Sindiwe Magona, qui a une place toute particulière dans la littérature sud-africaine. Sindiwe, que voici, vient d'Afrique du Sud et nous avons la chance d'avoir sa traductrice, Sarah Davis Cordova, qui travaille en Amérique, à Milwaukee. Donc, Amérique, Afrique, Europe, voilà, on va couvrir de vastes espaces. Nous sommes là parce que les éditions Mémoire d'Encrier ont publié, et je les en félicite vivement, un roman de Sindiwe Magona, Mère à Mère, Mother to Mother. Et ça faisait longtemps que dans mes blogs, je souhaitais que quelqu'un traduise Sindiwe Magona. Ça me paraissait un vide que Mémoire d'Encrier a rempli, donc on est très content. Le mieux, c'est de faire parler notre intervenante sur ce livre. Mère à mère, ça raconte, c'est à partir d'une histoire véridique, l'histoire de Amy Biehl, qui était une étudiante américaine qui travaillait dans les faubourgs du Cap, qui a été prise dans une émeute et en est morte. Et Sindiwe Magona a pris cet exemple pour... Il faut dire qu'elle connaissait la mère d'un des 4 garçons meurtriers, si on peut dire, bien que ce terme soit à nuancer. Et donc, comme elle la connaissait, a imaginé comment cette femme aurait écrit à la mère d'Amy Biehl. C'est comme ça que c'est venu. Alors, ma question, Sindiwe Magona, how did you approach Mandisa, the mother of the young guy who was one of the 4 killers?
Approach her in writing about her or going to her?
Going to her first.
I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
So you just did it on your own, and then you showed her the book.
Yes.
And what did she say?
Well, when I eventually, when the thing happened, when the incident happened, I didn't say, oh, there's a novel. But of course, like the rest of the world, I was sorrowed and shocked and, and saddened for the Biehls, the parents, the family of the young woman who was killed. We are programmed by society to always feel sorry for that side of the tragedy. We hardly ever give a thought to the other side, the side of the perpetrator, the family of the perpetrator. I didn't. Then months later, I went back to South Africa. At this time, I was still working at the United Nations, but I went back for the big elections in South Africa, the first truly democratic elections. And I was there for 6 weeks. Then then the last day, the evening of the last day, I'm at the airport. A friend drove me there. We have been friends since we were in grade 2. And we talk about the excitement of the elections and everything else that was. And then she said, we also talked about the 4 young men accused of killing Amy Biehl. They were then on trial. And then she says, do you know, one of those young men is Nontutu Zelo's son. I went, which Nontutu Zelo? We only know one Nontutu Zelo between the 2 of us. So she said, Nontutu Zelo, like the one we both know. And the next words out of my mouth were, God, how is she coping? That was the first time I ever felt any empathy for the mother or the parent of a killer. But that was because this is somebody I knew, somebody with whom I played as a child. We grew up in the same neighborhood. And when we were children, the next thing that came to my mind was, dear God, I know I bitch and moan about my life, but look at me. That could so easily have been my son. It wasn't. And I at moments like that, I really feel grateful. I do most of the time, but sometimes I don't. But I thought, I've been so lucky. I have been so blessed to have the life I have. Why? Why do I have this life when millions of people with whom I grew up have the life I described elsewhere in my writing? They have become perfect products of apartheid. I am, with other people, not the only one, the exception. We escaped. Somehow, we transcended apartheid. And then I asked myself, I know myself, I mean, on the world, I wouldn't say I would become an angel. I'm not the best person. I do bad things sometimes, and I'm not always good. I thought, why do I get these blessings? I know it's not because I deserve them. Then I think perhaps I'm still being given a chance to do some good in the world. And one of the things I do is give voice to the things, bear witness. I'm not a writer. I didn't train to be a writer. I'm an accidental writer. And so I'm hugely, hugely grateful when I get this kind of attention. When Sarah said she wanted to translate the book, I laughed because I didn't believe it. I believe it now because I see the book and people who know French say it's a very good translation. But I really, so. But then when I realized what had happened and who was involved, I really felt sorrow. I wasn't writing a book. I went to New York. The sorrow stayed with me. I wasn't writing a book. I remembered, I knew Nontutuzel, and I knew the kind of zestful, witty young person she was. But she left school at 14 and her life went down from there. And I knew she would want to meet Amy's mother. She would want to, because that's our tradition. When things like that happen, the parents, the side that has done wrong, should go to the other side and offer apologies and make amendments if this is possible. But what English, I thought? She went to school for what, 3 years, 4 years? How can she make Amy's mother understand? And Amy's mother is not even South African. Not that most white South Africans understand any Xhosa. How will they talk? But I also wanted Amy's mother to know the fact. The president declared a day, an hour of silence countrywide, and a day of marching through Gugulethu to make the streets of Gugulethu safe. They were never safe before Amy's murder. And I knew they were not going to be safe because you must. This is all kind of hogwash. But I wanted Amy's family to understand that in reality, all South Africa killed Amy Biehl for allowing race hate to reach the levels it reached. And to look at those, I'm not excusing them, but they are a product of society. They have learned the hate from us, the parents and grandparents. And while the people who coined slogans such as one settler, one bullet, wouldn't go and do it, the young people went and did one settler, one bullet. And to make this tragedy even more, for me, meaningless, she wasn't even South African. She died because she wore a white skin Her body was inside a white skin, but she wasn't South African. One settler, one bullet didn't apply to her. She wasn't a settler in South Africa, and she was there to help black people negotiate the path to freedom. And then the black people killed her. I mean, there are so many things that for me make Amy's death just something else. And this child is in the country for a year. She was there on a Fulbright scholarship of a year. When does she get killed? The day she's leaving, the next day. But I didn't. Then when eventually 3 years later, I realized I was never going to, I'm a coward basically. I was never going to find Amy's mother and give her this story I'm giving you. So I wrote, I wrote instead. But because I'm a coward, I didn't approach the Biehl's, I didn't approach Nontutuzelo. I wrote the book, got a publisher. I'm in South Africa, June. The book is coming out in September. The coward turns. Now, of course, I'm more scared of the book being published, and they don't know. So I met them then.
So you met the mother and you met the Biehl's as well?
I met the Biehl's, and then I went to meet the mother.
Mm-hmm. And may I ask, how were both reactions?
Yeah.
Juste avant qu'on continue, est-ce que tout le monde comprend? Oui, ça va? D'accord.
Thank you.
Oui?
Well, the Biehl's did something incredible. And I've always said, I wish if I were in that situation, I would behave like the Biehl's, but I am not sure. After the death of their child, they went to South Africa, and then they created an organization, the Amy Biehl Foundation, which helps people like these 4 young men, young people who might, who are likely to get into criminality, high school, primary school, to prevent that from happening. They help young people who are likely to become criminals, the same kind of people these 4 young men were, not to get there. So I called the office, made an appointment, took 4 books. I had 4 books already by this time. So I took 2 sets of 4 books. I left the 1 set in the car, walked into the office to meet the Biehl's. The mother wasn't there. Big round table. He's sitting that side. I throw the books, and I'm a writer, I've written these books, and now I've written another book about what happened to your daughter. He understood something, and he asked a few questions, but the most important one was that when was the book coming out? September. Could I ask the publisher to please give them a copy? Here is his card. I'm sure the publisher will mail you a copy. And could I ask the publisher to bring the publication date forward so that it is instead of September, it is 25th August, the anniversary of Amy's death. I'll ask the publisher, okay, now that we are done with our business, could we go out and have a cup of coffee? Oh, no, I have another appointment. You think I want to have coffee with this man? I'm so scared, so I lie. And I run away. I go to my friend in Guguletu and I give her the books. I explain the same thing. I say, and here are the books I've written already. Read them if you, yeah. Then some months later, my phone rings. I go, UNDPI, hello. This is Peter Biehl. Yes. We got the book. Yes. I'm dying inside. We read the book. Oh, God. Yes. We loved the book. We bought 30 copies. We gave to friends, Archbishop. Why didn't you say so? From the first. And they were asked to come and give a talk at the General Assembly for that year, the year the book came out, for 10th December, Human Rights Day. Oh, they agreed if Sindiwe Magona joins them. People do things to me. So I had, of course, I work at the UN, I can't say no. So I go there, we have the the plenary session, and then can we have lunch? By this time, of course, I must say yes. I go, I go and have lunch with the Biehls. We have a very good. They are really good people. Peter Biehl is late now. We talk, and Linda says, I couldn't read the book. I started, but I can't. It makes, she couldn't. I explained why I wrote the book and that kind of thing. The next time they were in New York, of course, now we are in frequent dialogue. We also had the same Japanese restaurant. We had lunch again, and Linda stands up, comes around, hugs me. She had read the book, and she says, it helped me better understand. For me, this is my Pulitzer Prize, honestly, because if I had more courage, there would be no book. I would have found them or written a letter to the press. I don't do things like that. I would have explained all this to her. The reason I wrote the book is to make the Biehl family better understand the tragedy, and hopefully South Africans to better examine themselves.
And what was the reaction of the mother, your former friend? Did she read the book?
I don't know, but I know the reaction when there was a play later on, and she was invited to the day before the opening.
The rehearsal?
The big rehearsal before the opening. She cried through the whole play, and she refused to come to opening night.
Mm-hmm. And did you meet one of the 4 boys?
I've met, one has disappeared. One, nobody knows what happened. Some say he went back to the Eastern Cape, but I have met the 2 who work for the Amy Biehl Foundation. Yeah. 2 of these boys work for the Amy Biehl Foundation, and Amy's mother and the father, used to travel throughout when, talking about this incident, fundraising. She called them her children, and I met Nontutuzelo's son once, and I realized I had no inclination of meeting him again. I haven't.
You were mentioning the Archbishop, Desmond Tutu. Mm-hmm. Have you heard about his reactions reading the book?
No.
No?
No.
Because he was very influential in those days, especially
he still is.
The Truth and Reconciliation mm-hmm. Commission. Mm-hmm. So he certainly could explain more the situation and how the 4 boys landed in such a situation.
Yeah, but I haven't had any real contact with the Archbishop.
I did tell the Archbishop that I was translating it, and he said it was about time.
I agree. I wonder, you look a little bit like Archbishop. Are you a cousin of his?
You're not the first person to say that. No, we're not related at all. And yeah, actually, I did meet him when they were celebrating Leia's 80th or 85th birthday.
Just recently?
No, about 5 years ago, and I was asked to write a poem for that. Yes, mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Yeah, but he does insist that he is retired.
Yes. Well, he's about 90, isn't he?
Yeah, he's over 90.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be 90. Ooh, he'll be 90 on the 7th of October.
Oh.
Can we switch for a few minutes to the translation? How did you come in contact with Mémoire d'Encrier?
I came in contact with...
En français, peut-être, oui, c'est plus simple.
J'ai eu un premier contact avec Mémoire d'Encrier, vraiment à travers le directeur de la maison d'édition, Rodney Saint-Éloi, qui est un Haïtien, qui avait une maison d'édition en Haïti et qui a dû s'exiler lors de la dictature des Duvalier, et il s'est installé donc à Montréal. Et il a réouvert une maison d'édition. Donc là, c'était Mémoire en Haïti, à Port-au-Prince, et à Montréal, c'est donc Mémoire d'André. Et quand je l'ai rencontré, je l'ai vraiment rencontré comme auteur, comme poète. C'est un très très bel auteur et poète. Et donc je l'avais invité par la suite à l'université de Wisconsin, où j'enseigne à Milwaukee. Vous connaissez peut-être, puisque ça a été beaucoup dans les nouvelles, malheureusement, pour toutes les mauvaises raisons ces 2 dernières années. Et donc, je l'ai connu comme ça. Et j'avais cherché à trouver des maisons d'édition ici en France, sans beaucoup de succès. Et donc, je lui ai proposé la traduction. Et tout de suite, il a voulu savoir plus sur ce livre qui était Sindiwe Magona, parce que beaucoup de ses œuvres qu'il publie sont des œuvres Enfin, il ne fait pas énormément de traductions. Normalement, c'est vraiment des œuvres d'Haïtiens, d'auteurs qui écrivent en français, mais de plus en plus, il commence à se rendre compte qu'il y a aussi beaucoup de textes qui ont besoin d'être lus par un public francophone, et donc il a accepté Mère à Mère, il a fallu que je lui donne des parties, il voit un petit peu qu'est-ce que c'était que ce texte, mais il a très très vite accepté.
C'est une excellente initiative, en effet. Je voudrais signaler que Sindiwe Magona, quand elle a travaillé à l'ONU, a pris la peine d'apprendre le français. C'est pour ça qu'on ne traduit pas, elle nous comprend presque tout ce qu'on dit. On revient au livre. Il y a quand même quelque chose qui m'a paru curieux dans votre livre, c'est que la mère du garçon qui a tué Amy Biehl tombe enceinte sans faire l'amour. Ça m'a paru bizarre. Suite à des jeux de mains. Ah oui, il faut traduire là, pardon.
So he found it a bit odd, the way in which Mandisa became pregnant with this playing of hands.
Well, it's fiction.
Oh, good.
But it's fiction based on truth.
But technically, how is that possible?
It is very possible. Because when I first heard of such an incident, I must have been about 16, 17. A woman my mother's age told us how she got pregnant. The same age as my mother, Mandela, Mrs. Sisulu. Mm-hmm. During those days, women were proud to be examined, vaginal examination. They were proud. Mrs. Sisulu talks about it in her autobiography. This, to them, said, I'm still a girl. I'm still, I'm my father's daughter. And so she knew there was a way traditionally that young people, sexuality before we got civilized and westernized and educated and blah, blah, blah. Youth sexuality was accepted and encouraged, but young people were taught how to be together with no penetration. Mm-hmm. It was called playing. You play between the thighs. Mm-hmm. Yeah? And this woman tells us, I was friends with her niece, that imagine her surprise when she got pregnant and she had never done what a wife does. That's how they put it. And so she thought, oh my God, what will the old people, what will the grown people think I had done? I had spread my legs, I had lain on my back and spread my legs for a man, which is real sex. And she hadn't. Mm-hmm. But when she was examined, she was intact. So her pride was that she got pregnant, and this happens. Sometimes the sperm worms its way. And you should see this man who is the result. He's older now. He's a fullback. He plays rugby. He doesn't know I know this. And I look at him and say, no wonder. So this is a true story, but it didn't happen to Nontutuzel. But it intrigued me so much that I used it in the fiction. But it does happen. We have a saying in Xhosa, ungenwe. She has been entered, meaning the sperm entered without penetration.
Without penetration. Faut traduire? Non, ça va? Très bien. La langue maternelle de Sindiwe Magona est le Xhosa. C'est une langue du groupe bantou, qui est une langue hyper logique. Mais il y a un effort au départ extrêmement important, c'est que les noms sont classés dans 15 catégories. Et donc il faut savoir dans quelle catégorie il faut classer le mot. Et à la suite de ça, tous les suffixes, les préfixes, les interfixes, tout ça découle très logiquement. Ce qui fait parfois de longs mots, c'est d'ailleurs très beau. Et,
But if I may interrupt,
sure.
it is also the language that has, according to the Guinness Book of Records, the longest tongue twister in the world.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Alors, le Xhosa est célèbre pour ses clics. Il y en a 3. Could you click for us, please?
Oh no.
Xhosa, Xhosa,
Xhosa, Ikaka, and look at my beautiful Amaikiki.
Voilà.
Amaikiki.
Because I wouldn't dare to click.
No.
And besides, I learned Zulu, which is not exactly the same.
They're very similar. Zulu has clicks too, but the lazy Zulus use fewer clicks. My best friend is Zulu. The woman who plays, the actor who plays Mandisa is Zulu.
Is Zulu. And you write as well in Xhosa.
Yes, I do a little bit. And the reason I don't write exclusively in Xhosa or more in Xhosa is because there is no market. The only market for books written in the indigenous languages is school. If your book isn't going to make it to school, the publishers don't want to know. And sometimes publishers will come to you and say, we need this kind of books. You know, this is the book we want, a book about this, a book so many pages, that kind of, yeah.
But you wrote a lot in Xhosa, I think.
Yes, when I did.
School books for young people?
That's because the publishers want those, you know, the old folk tales. Yeah, I have a lot of those.
And do you translate from Xhosa to
English?
English?
Yes.
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 Is it a difficult process?
It's not difficult, but it's not worth doing. Yeah, it's not difficult, and I like translation. I enjoy translation, but I only like to translate little books or a poem, something I can finish quickly. I translated my first book of autobiography. By the time I finished, I realized it takes the same amount of time. And then you don't have another book, it's the same book. Honestly, I was so surprised. You mean I don't have 2 books? No, the publisher said, this is still 1 book. I thought, never again, never again.
Et vous, Sarah, pour la traduction du livre Mother to Mother, quelles ont été les difficultés? Alors d'abord, il y a plusieurs expressions en Xhosa, et puis il y a de l'afrikaans aussi. Et puis il y a de l'anglais sud-africain, de l'argot sud-africain. Quelle plus grande difficulté avez-vous rencontrée?
C'était surtout d'essayer de garder la voix de Sindiwe. Parce que je ne voulais pas faire un texte qui serait du français classique. Je ne voulais pas qu'on utilise des mots qui correspondent à une réalité qu'on a en France ou en Amérique du Nord. Je voulais vraiment essayer de garder cette chose qui va, quand on lit, on va dire c'est pas tout à fait notre réalité. Donc j'ai essayé vraiment d'essayer de trouver des mots qui correspondaient, mais qui n'allaient pas nous donner une réalité qu'on reconnaîtrait ici comme étant la vie d'une jeune fille en France. Donc c'était vraiment trouver le vocabulaire, et c'est ça qui m'a pris le plus de temps, de trouver quelque chose qui était compréhensible, mais en même temps qui n'était pas une réalité qu'on avait ici. Parce que même l'anglais de l'Afrique du Sud n'est pas l'anglais américain, ni l'anglais de l'Angleterre, ni l'anglais du Canada.
Et vous avez des amis Xhosa pour leur poser la question, savoir si...
Non, j'ai posé des questions à Sindiwe.
Directement à Sindiwe.
Oui.
Alors,
et dans le texte en anglais, elle traduit beaucoup des... si ce n'est pas une traduction littérale, elle nous donne une traduction pour qu'on comprenne. Donc j'ai gardé là où il y avait le lycée Xhosa, je l'ai laissé comme elle l'avait dans l'original, et après j'ai suivi comment elle l'avait décrit cette phrase, parce qu'elle ne faisait pas une traduction littérale, mais elle nous donnait le sens de ce proverbe.
Alors pour l'Afrikaans, j'ai 2 petites remarques. Il y a le mot stoep. En Afrique du Sud, le stoep est un auvent qui couvre souvent la façade principale de la maison, parfois même 3 côtés de la maison, et c'est un lieu convivial où on vient se réunir. Et alors vous l'avez traduit par porche, et ça me fait tiquer, parce qu'en fait...
Je ne l'ai pas traduit, je l'ai mis en note.
Porche.
J'ai gardé stoop
oui,
dans le
ça,
texte,
oui.
et j'ai mis porch dans la note, parce que justement, c'était pas ce genre de stoop-là, parce que c'était dans la maison de Mandisa, et donc c'est juste un petit
auvent, c'est ça.
Oui, c'est pas du tout cet
Mais
espace...
Sarah, il y a un mot, c'est un mot qui nous vient de la Réunion, c'est la varangue.
Oui,
et donc,
mais c'est pas la même chose, parce que ça fait le tour de la maison.
Ça peut faire le tour de la maison.
Oui. Donc justement, j'ai pas choisi ça, parce que je savais que ce n'était pas du tout le cas dans le
Alors,
township.
deuxième remarque, c'est mineur, mais on en profite entre traducteurs. Veldskoen, vous avez traduit ça par chausson. Et pour moi, c'est des croquenots de randonnée, les veldskoen. C'est un truc de bourg, vraiment du quotidien. Alors, qui est-ce qui vous a donné cette fausse indication?
C'est parce que je connaissais une personne à Langa qui en avait et qui s'en servait comme des chaussons.
Ah, d'accord. Elle nouait pas, elle s'en servait.
Voilà, exactement.
D'accord, oui. Ok.
Donc ça, c'était des hand-me-downs, c'est ce qui avait été donné par
je comprends.
La femme blanche. Et donc c'est pour ça que je me suis dit, encore une fois, c'était l'usage dans la maison qui était fait, et c'était pas celle que j'utiliserais.
Normalement, très bien. Sindiwe, vous citez à un moment dans ce livre un lieu. You talk about a mythical place called Mbo. What does that mean in Xhosa culture?
It's not mythical.
No? What is that?
It's where we all come from. Embo.
Mbo.
The belief is that there is a place, Embo. Don't ask me whereabouts in Africa. My geography is the lousiest subject. I don't know any. But all Bantu people come from Embo. So there are songs and there are myths and there are,
But it's a sort
Abambo.
of Eden, a sort of paradise, no?
No, it's not paradise.
No, it's just a place
of
where the Bantu people come from. That means from Central Africa, and they came down to the southern part. And you talk also about Lobola. Is it still very important in present society? Lobola, c'est la dot.
Yeah, it is, but like most things, it's from where I stand, it's kind of corrupted. It no longer has the same meaning, and some people, it has changed, but it is still practiced. Let me just cut it short. Yeah.
On voit encore. Très souvent, ça a été en termes de bêtes.
Oui.
Et on voit encore quelquefois, quand on est en train de conduire sur la N1 ou la N2, en allant vers Stellenbosch ou quelque chose comme ça, on voit les bêtes en train de traverser les ponts lorsqu'il y a justement une discussion ou quand il va y avoir un mariage.
She was coming. She was going to come today. She was going to come today. I'm so surprised. You know, Lobola was, for instance, people now use the term pay Lobola. That for me is wrong. You don't pay Lobola, you offer Lobola. But now, of course, people use money, that's where it comes from, the payment. Lobola was giving to the family, the parents of your future wife, so many cattle, according to whatever the negotiations was decided during the marriage negotiations. And the offering of this was a guarantee that this girl we are taking was valued by her parents and her family. You will value her, you will look after her, you will look after her children, and that her life would never be a life of exceeding hardship or should the husband die or should the husband ill-treat her, she can always come back home. Nobody's going to say, you coming back with this brood of children for us to do what? Lobola safeguards that. She comes back, there are the cattle or the offspring of the cattle to look after her and her children. And even if her father dies, the sons remember that Lobola was offered. So she and her children will never be bereft, never. But that doesn't happen now. People take Lobola and forget. Your husband, almost kills you. They say, go back, who's going to look after you? So Lobola is still practiced, but the meaning of it has kind of watered down, and greed has done the rest.
Is there in Xhosa society the same as in Zulu society? That means polygamy is sometimes accepted.
You see my face changing.
Well, you see, we all know about Zuma, who practice it openly.
It's the law.
It's the law, and it's
the law says
with
yes.
Zulu.
Yes.
Okay, but in your society as well?
Yes.
Yes.
And it used to be, when I was growing up, the belief was that only if you could afford to support this extended family. Well, now anybody who feels like it will have more than one wife or more than one girlfriend and more than one child and more than... People are not mindful of the lives of the children. We have a disease, a plague really, of single parenthood. That means the mother. In 99 out of 100 times, it means the mother is saddled with raising the children without their father. And it is a sad thing. It is really terrible for the children. And society hasn't seen it fit to do something really meaningful or to declare this a crisis. Young people, children shouldn't be growing up in such neglect. And then we just kind of say, oh, there's a growing number. Oh, there's millions of children are growing up fatherless. We shouldn't. But we are a nation that accepts anything and then get used to it and then just give it a name. Child-headed households. Single mothers, women. Yeah. Your question was about polygamy. It is.
It exists as
not
well.
only is it still practiced, it is the law, because men have managed to put it under the blanket, to rope it in and as tradition.
Isn't that incredible in the sense that your constitution is one of the most modern in the world? you had marriage, same-sex marriage long before here in France, for instance. So your constitution is very interesting, but on that topic, it's a bit afterwards. It's a bit old-fashioned, this polygamy acceptance.
Oh, we have a marvelous constitution, but it's not our lived reality. Same-sex marriages, people flock to South Africa from elsewhere in Africa because they think, but the society is not enlightened. There is right now not only gender-based violence, but, gendered women are targets. They are killed because they are lesbians. And the terms such as corrective rape, I mean, the insanity of, because somebody is known or declares she's a lesbian, you go and rape her to remind her she's a woman, corrective rape. How insane can you be? The Constitution is one thing, the lived reality is something else.
Yes, it's a macho society on many aspects, indeed.
Yeah.
Is that also your... C'est aussi votre impression, ça?
Oui, tout à fait. Oui, malheureusement. Hein? C'est pas chacun, évidemment, mais c'est bien trop répandu.
Vous êtes resté 3 ans en Afrique du Sud, c'est ça?
C'est ça.
En 2005-2008?
C'est ça,
à peu près.
oui.
Donc les choses avaient déjà changé. C'était après 94, après la Constitution de 96. Donc petit à petit, la société se normalise. Et pourtant, elle reste encore traumatisée par ce passé de l'apartheid qui a pour longtemps endommagé la société.
Oui, qui continue. Malheureusement, cette violence a été imprimée sur le corps de chaque personne, que ce soit l'oppresseur ou que ce soit l'opprimé. Et les deux sont aussi traumatisés d'une façon ou d'une autre.
Et on ne peut pas penser que l'apartheid géographique se dissolve avant des générations et des générations. La géographie urbaine est très claire de ce point de vue-là.
Il y a ça aussi, mais c'est pire. Je pense que c'est
dans la
les
tête
têtes et dans les mœurs, dans la façon de réagir. Et malheureusement, la division entre ceux qui ont de l'argent et ceux qui n'en ont pas est toujours un gouffre énorme. Ce qui fait que malheureusement, comme partout dans le monde, la violence se fait contre soi-même. C'est rare que la violence se fait vraiment contre ceux qui ont. On finit par... La violence se fait contre sa femme, contre le voisin, contre la personne dans la rue qu'on rencontre. Donc ce n'est pas quelque chose qui est planifié de cette façon-là, par rapport aux jeunes hommes ici, où c'était quand même tout un mouvement contre le pouvoir, contre l'apartheid. Avec les jeunes aujourd'hui, c'est une violence qui existe juste là, parce qu'il n'y a rien à faire, il n'y a pas de travail, il y a très peu d'éducation, malgré le changement. C'est plus l'éducation bantoue, mais malheureusement, ça continue à être un vrai problème. Et donc, la violence se fait contre ses voisins, contre sa mère, contre des vieilles personnes. Même le respect pour les personnes âgées ne joue pas de la même façon. Et contre les enfants.
Et c'est d'autant plus surprenant qu'en Afrique, il y a justement, théoriquement, un grand respect pour les personnes âgées. Et effectivement, on constate en Afrique du Sud, mais hélas ailleurs sur le continent, que c'est en train de s'affadir. Oui. Juste un point d'information, l'Afrique du Sud est classée en numéro 1 sur l'indice de Gini. Est-ce que vous connaissez cet économiste italien qui prend le quintile donc les 5% les plus riches d'un pays et les 5% les plus pauvres. Et ça détermine le ratio entre riches entre très riches et très pauvres. Et l'Afrique du Sud se retrouve en tête. Elle a détrôné le Brésil, qui déjà avait des revenus. Alors, certains amis économistes m'ont dit, mais la Chine n'est pas claire dans ses statistiques, donc peut-être qu'en Chine, l'indice est plus élevé. Mais néanmoins, ça veut dire qu'il y a encore dans ce pays, en Afrique du Sud, des gens extrêmement riches et tout un tas de personnes qui malgré le changement de régime en 1994, sont encore restés en bas du chemin.
The two things that are growing in South Africa is poverty and security, because the rich people are scared of the poor people. Poverty and security, the companies that come and give you, burglar bars and iron gates and tall walls and that kind of thing. Poverty and security.
Vous voulez ajouter quelque chose?
Non.
I have several questions about other books you've written. Can you tell us a bit more about Beauty's Gift?
Oh, Beauty's Gift. Beauty's Gift. Beauty is the name of a girl, a young woman, who is married. She is friends with 4 other women. They have been friends from way back when they were children. Now they are in their late 20s, early 30s. They are professional women. So I wanted to write a book about the problems women, are faced with in South Africa. Beauty dies of AIDS. Beauty is faithfully married, but the husband obviously isn't. So a faithfully married woman dies of AIDS. Her story, because at the time when she died in the novel, people were hiding that they were HIV positive because there was shame attached to it. Never mind that, the doctors didn't put on the death certificate AIDS because they put whatever, because AIDS make your defense disappear. So you die of something else, but you die because you have no defense in your system. So they put whatever killed you. They won't say because of AIDS. But Beauty looks at her 4 friends. Each one has a problem. It's not only AIDS. It's womanizing perhaps, and it's drunkenness or stinginess or wife beating or controlling of her friends. She realizes that although they are femme friends, they call themselves 5 femme friends, they don't help one another by being less than frank about the situation with their men. Things like your husband even forgets your birthday. You go and buy yourself jewelry. Look what he gave me for my birthday. You lying to your friends. It's true, people do that because you don't want your friends to think you're in a bad marriage. You're keeping up appearances. So she thought the best thing she could do, despite the fact that people hide, and her husband, of course, makes a promise not to tell anybody, not to tell her parents, not to tell her friends, she is HIV positive. So she's dying, but they hide this. So she tells her friends, this is her gift. She says, you know what? Let's not lie to ourselves. Let's be honest. I will start. This is my story. And because she tells them her truth, this is her gift, which makes the other 4 stronger. By the end of each woman, girl because they're children to me, each woman has her journey. So it's the journey of the 5 women that changes because of Beauty's death from AIDS, but because of her honesty. That's her gift, because she makes her friends, become, strong and self-examine and open up towards at least one another and see what lies they live on and come out and say, no more lies in my life, and confront and go on and become strong. At the end of the book, they are such beautiful women. They were before, but they are stronger women now. And the husbands have to deal with that. That's Beauty's Gift.
J'en profite pour dire que le sida a été particulièrement virulent en Afrique australe, pas seulement l'Afrique du Sud, mais en Afrique australe. Une explication, c'est que la souche serait plus résistante aux médicaments. Une autre est que il y a notamment dans les zones rurales, mais pas seulement, l'idée que si l'on a des rapports sexuels avec une vierge, on peut se débarrasser de la maladie. Donc vous imaginez les répercussions affreuses que ça a pu avoir. Le sida, alors ça c'est un des rares points à mettre à l'actif de Jacob Zuma, a été d'abord un peu, marginalisé par le président Mbeki, et Zuma, lui, a entrepris une campagne de tests un peu partout dans le pays, qui au moins a permis d'avoir une image plus claire de ce qui se passait. Et puis on a négocié avec les grandes entreprises pharmaceutiques la possibilité d'avoir des médicaments à moindre frais. Donc je ne dis pas qu'on est sorti du sida, mais il y a depuis quelques années un véritable effort pour améliorer la situation.
Oui, c'était des compagnies pharmaceutiques en Inde.
En Inde, oui.
Encore une fois, qui font la tétra.
Thérapie,
tétrathérapie, oui, c'est ça exactement.
Trithérapie.
Qui beaucoup moins cher, hein, et donc on revient aujourd'hui avec l'histoire du Covid, n'est-ce pas, qui va produire les vaccins pour pouvoir qu'on puisse les distribuer dans des pays qui ne peuvent pas se payer les prix que nous payons dans l'Ouest pour ces vaccins.
May I finish? Unfortunately, because of this book, because of beauty, most people just remember the AIDS part. They don't remember the other journeys. So this very good book got classified as an anti-AIDS book.
Not only.
Malheureusement. Poor beauty.
Well, talking about diseases, how is the COVID situation presently in South Africa?
It's not getting better.
Mm.
No, it's not getting better. But that's South Africa for you.
And we are in winter now in South Africa. That means the virus is more active.
If you say so. I don't know much about it. I just keep inside and do nothing.
Yeah. The virus likes cold weather.
Yeah, yeah.
Tell us about.
This is a book I didn't plan to write. I didn't know I was going to write. This scientist is American. She works at a university. She goes to something that Stellenbosch University has, a unit. You don't apply to go there. They invite you if you have a big brain. I have not been invited. She has been going there for a long time. She works on human origins and that kind of thing. And Stellenbosch likes her work, likes it so much. 4 or 5 years ago, some years ago, they said, this is very good work, Nina, but we want a children's book because of the history of this country. We want a book that helps every child to learn and to realize that the skin you wear has nothing to do with ability or character. So Nina said, she's not a child, she doesn't write for children. She asked another big brain there called Njabulo Ndebele to find her an author who writes for children. Njabulo is 4 or 5 years younger than me, but 100 years bigger than me. So Njabulo thinks of me, calls me, says, Sindiwe, I have this request to make, blah, 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 blah. Everything in my body is screaming, no! I don't want to work with any scientist. I don't know, I've never worked with collaborated with anybody. I thought, this is bad. But remember, I said, I'm a coward. Yes, Njabulo. Thank you, Njabulo. I'm such a fool. So Nina and I meet. She gives me her notes, and we have lunch at Stellenbosch. She sends a cab to come and pick me up, take to Stellenbosch. We lunch, it's very good. And I like him. And I like the work she does, but I don't know how to write a book that has science. I get back after lunch, it's autumn. The sun is hot. It's a sunny day, about 3 o'clock. I walk through the gate. I reach behind to get on the wall to get my mail. There is a bush there. And honestly, this is gospel truth. On the branches, there are still branches, but, and leaves are green, but some are going brown. There is a chameleon right there. Yeah. I watch the chameleon, slowly go from the brown part of the tree, the trunk, and go onto a green leaf and change color. And I thank you, God. There's my book. I suddenly had the book. I knew how I was going to. And so I wrote the book. But the book is written, it's 2 parts. There is the yada yada, that's me. Yada yada yada, talking to children. It's a children's book. But you also have science. Nina explains everything. The origins of humanity, she says there's only one race, the human race. She explains the science, what the scientists in the 12th or 16th century said about if you have a long nose, if you have blue eyes, you are more intelligent than the one with that kind of thing. And how this science, these people got honorary doctorates from universities such as Cambridge and Oxford. They haven't called those back. But never mind. And then later, other scientists proved this is wrong. But people still remember the earlier scientists. So this is the book. And, Stellenbosch gave the book to, Nina approached a publisher, a big publisher in South Africa, who wanted the book, but he's so big, he doesn't do the work. He has different houses, and each has its own editor. He gave it to his editor, who said, this is not the kind of book we do. So he took the book and gave it back to Nina and said, find a publisher, and I will finance the publication of this book, because I want it to be cheap enough to be available to almost everybody. He financed the publication of this book. That would maybe cost 300 rand. It cost 99, cost less than 100 rand. It's not his publication, but he believed in the work so much. He paid the money, and then he bought thousands to donate. This is what I call, really a man with a heart. That's the book. And then I have poetry too. I wrote some poems. I have a book of poetry. And then I have other books. But my writing started with autobiography. I have 2 books of autobiography to my children's children about my growing up until 19 or 20. And then I have part 2, Forced to Grow. And I have other books. But this is my latest.
What is it about?
Well, there's Hillary Clinton has a book about, the title? It Takes a Village to Raise a Child. The question I pose here, what happens when the village sleeps? Because village South Africa has gone to sleep. Mampela Rampela says at the peak, a wake-up call to the sleeping village, that is our country, and a must-read to feed our souls.
Sindiwe, when you were in the United States, could you follow what was the literature in South Africa, and especially black women writers like Ellen Kuzwayo, Miriam Tlali, Bessie Head? Could you be aware of what's... You were completely out of the...
No, I have a strange mind. Other word for stupid is strange. Because once I thought I was going to write, I don't have a photogenic memory. But I thought, stop reading South African literature because you will sit down and regurgitate other people's work. I wish I could be this. I wish I could do things like that. I can't. I can't even regurgitate my own work. When I want to write something I've written and it's not in front of me, I don't know what I wrote. But I stopped myself for years. I didn't read South African literature. Now, of course, I do faithfully because I know I won't reproduce it. I can't. I don't know how to. I don't have that ability. What stopped me really is stupidity.
You were mentioning Njabulu Ndebele. Do you read him?
I do, yes. Who doesn't?
Well, the French public can recently read his latest, The Cry of Winnie Mandela. Mm-hmm. It was translated in French.
Yeah.
You are working with other writers in Guguletu Writers Group.
Yeah, we
what
stopped
does it
now
mean?
because of COVID.
Mm.
Yeah, I try and nurture emerging writers, especially those writing in isiXhosa. Because when you start, I remember my own journey, when you start to write, you really, I still do actually, doubt yourself. You think you can sit down and the book will be there, but it doesn't happen like that.
It's a long and very painful process.
Yeah, you put your butt on them, sit and you try and you try. And writing is really a revision. Very few writers can sit down and go, and it's perfect. Most of us have to grind at it and go over it. And you look at something you wrote and you think, brilliant. You look at it again another day and you think, how could I write such garbage? You just need to stay with it for the longest. And then you will find what it is you really set out to do. And you find, you read about how other people do it. They write about writing, how writing is done, and you learn as you go along.
Est-ce qu'il y a des questions dans la salle pour Sindiwe Magona? Je ne sais même pas s'il y a un micro, non? Il y a un micro qu'on peut faire circuler? Oui, d'accord. Le micro arrive.
C'était par la femme. I'm sorry, I have no question, but as nobody has, I would like you to repeat as you could what you spoke yesterday about the importance of learning from the others, because that was so beautiful. As long as I grow up, as long as I learn from others. Could you speak about it a little more? You said that yesterday.
Can you go back over what you said yesterday about learning from others?
Growing by learning from others.
Mm-hmm. You were talking about how much when you are with other people and how much you learn from.
Oh, if I remember.
You remember?
Remember,
Should
I'm
I
this
remember
age.
you?
I think I said that with growing older, what I have learned, I hope I'm saying what you want me to say, is that I do not know everything there is to know. And I have a long way to go to learn. We often make the mistake of rushing to disagree. Just because somebody is saying something that is odd to me, strange to me, and with which I do not agree, doesn't mean I should write them off. What it actually means is that I should open my ears, open my mind, open my heart. Because it is actually the people who come to me with things I do not know, things I do not like, things I do not understand, who can help me to grow. If I am open to try and, try. Why? How did you come to this conclusion? Why is this so for you? Not in judgment, but because all the things we all know, they are not things, it's not knowledge we made, it's what we have been taught. Then who says what we have been taught is the only truth? Other people have been taught differently. Other people have come to different conclusions. So why don't we just be humble enough to understand that we need to learn to see things anew? What I don't understand, but that does not make it wrong. It means I don't understand it because I have not encountered it. And people who have can help me better understand it. You don't have to accept everything, but understanding grows you. That's what I've found. Just by understanding, I grow. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Pascal? Thank you, Pascal. See, I even remember your name. I wonder why I remember this name.
Yes, it's my name. Thank you. Do you, as there is no other question, this one is a little strange, but I'm trying. Do you think something you have been experiencing in your life, or something specific of your country? Do you think some specific suffering has given you a specific wisdom? Or
Something that you suffered.
I'm hard of hearing a little bit.
Has something that you suffered given you specific wisdom?
I don't know that is wisdom, but the fact that I suffered under apartheid, the fact that I grew up poor, but that was everybody. I didn't even know I was poor until I started working. But it was in my early 20s that I went from poor to destitution. This taught me that experience taught me something. The anger, my reaction against this, angry against my husband who abandoned me with all these children, and the bad choices I had. But, that experience taught me something. It doesn't matter who has done what to you. They're not going to come back and heal you. If someone hurt you, let them go. That's not, healing you is not their business. If they valued you, they would not have hurt you. And for me to think, I'm angry at my husband, I'm angry at the apartheid government, what do they care? My business is mending me. My business is growing me, which is why in this book, I was accused by some people that I'm anti-poor. I am not anti-poor. I'm anti-poverty. I'm anti-poverty. You read, which is how this book was born. You read in a magazine, a 16-year-old is holding a baby. She's being interviewed by a social worker. This is the story. Or I tried to get pregnant from when I was 13. Already my head is going, are you crazy? No, then the story goes on. I used to drink before I got pregnant. After I got pregnant, I started taking drugs. I wanted this baby to be deformed. Yes. South Africa is the leading country in the world on FAS, fetal alcohol syndrome. Do we say there's a crisis? No, the village sleeps. This article, the ending of this article, the social worker says, this is a growing trend in the township. Can you believe this? This is not one girl doing this, for me, a crime or a sin or something even bigger. It's a growing trend in the township. Young mothers, maiming the fetus in their wombs to get more money. For an ordinary child, you get then, it's a little bit more now, 300 rand a month. But for a deformed baby, boy, 1,400 and something. Who doesn't want, yes. So you maim your child. My question is, where is the future of the country? And why are we, the grown-ups? You know, I was very angry at this child, very angry. I wasn't writing a book, but it took me some time. But the question before this, the more I thought about it, the more it grew. My grandmother and that generation, people who never went to school, when they were, as soon as they knew they were pregnant, they stopped the long pipes they smoked, they stopped the beer they brewed at home, because they said, oh, now I'm ingesting for 2 people. Completely illiterate. They knew, they had wisdom enough to know that they must be careful, love enough to know, intelligence enough to know. And today, we are maiming children in our wombs for money. What does South Africa say? Nothing. 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 What crisis? Because I'm a coward, I didn't go to Parliament and say, hey, you wake up. I wrote a book. What can I say? It's a terrible thing, so, but I'm trying to, in a roundabout way, probably start a debate in the country that might lead to what one grandmother here does. Instead of, you know, our system says, helping poor people, you give them 400 rand a month continuously for 18 years. At the end of 18 years, they have not moved from poverty. They're still as poor as they were. So a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old gives you a baby, and the nation responds with, we'll give you money for 18 years. What can you do with 400 rand? Nothing. But what if, I don't have enough brain to think this, but I'm saying people with brains should come together and find a better solution. Our system of helping the poor should help them to stop being poor, to get out of poverty. Use the same money, but don't spread it for 18 years. You know, make more grant, a bigger grant, but a grant that also takes into account where the young woman is, so that she develops some skill, so she has earning power. And I'm basing this on my own life. When my husband left, I didn't even have high school. And the only way, when I got angry enough, and I wanted the way out of poverty, the only way I could think, nobody I knew was going to drop dead and leave me a fortune. I needed to up my education. And each time I did something, when I completed high school, I got a job, completed A-levels, better job, did my BA, better job, went to Columbia to get my master's, better. I ended up at the UN. But let's help that, poor people to get, and also wake them up to, you cannot be helped sitting down doing that. Agency. Your life will not change if you are not involved in that change. Wake up. Get very angry at being poor. Hate poverty. I want to, if I can teach hate, that's the hate I want to teach. Hate the state. Hate what you have become. You were not made to stay poor. No. No one is created to spend your life poor. Non tutuzelo, the Amy Biehl story. What could she have become? That is lost. The human potential we are losing still. People say now, the black child in South Africa their education is worse than during apartheid. And we know how bad it was during apartheid.
I have the feeling in South Africa that there are now two ways in terms of education, in terms of health. That if you're wealthy, you can have top hospitals, but then if you're on the countryside in a remote village, there is almost nothing to do. The same for education. You seem to.
But yes, but I really believe we have enough brains in the country, we have enough good hearts in the country, that if we first of all admit that we have a real problem and then tease it out what the problem is. No child, I don't care how poor the parents are. In this day and age, no child should be allowed to grow in poverty. No child should experience poverty. We must find a way of, being, somewhere there to make sure the child himself does not experience poverty.
Do you think the President Cyril Ramaphosa is able to change somewhat the system which Zuma left?
No, he can only change it if he is forced by the electorate. People must wake up to the power that they have, and we haven't as a nation. That's why we keep on voting for the same government. The only protest we have is go and kill robots, what do you call robots here?
Street lights.
Street lights. You go and you damage, you pull down the street lights, you ban libraries, you ban schools. This does not affect the government. The only effective way of protest is through the vote, but people have not realized that they can protest by where they put their cross. This is what has to be taught in South Africa, voter education, and that you have the power to get the government to do your will. That's why the printing press was invented, to teach, to enable people who vote to make sure, to hold government to be accountable. We don't do that. You vote for someone because they speak your language, because they are the same color. This is utter rubbish. It changes nothing. I don't care what language, what color a person is. I just want a very good government. And this is what we should aspire to, and this is what we should work to. Then the good minds and the good hearts can work towards a system. With the same amount the government is spending on one child for 18 years, you could get the mother and the child better health system, better education, but in a shorter period of time. 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, the woman has a skill, can look after her child. But, the pretend help, this for me is pretend help. I'm helping you, here's money. It doesn't really help.
It's not on the long run, indeed.
No, in the end, nobody is helped. We are growing poverty. The apartheid government said plain out, I don't want educated black people. Didn't pay for our education. Yeah? This government says everybody has equal education. It's not true.
Est-ce que ça suscite des réactions? Oui.
In case the people would awake and wish the government to act better for them, do you think you have candidates who are able to better the situation, to make the situation better?
I think even if the government knows they will be held to accountability, and that if they don't do what the people want, they will be kicked out, then they learn very fast to do the right thing. For instance, the crookedness of stealing money, of using public funds for themselves would stop. whoever the candidates are, people would choose, and also we should change the system of how we choose people. It should be more direct vote, that you vote for someone you want, not just vote for the party. This hides a lot of sins because people don't have to perform. They belong to the party. Then the party says, you.
C'est exactement ça. Dans le système sud-africain, aux élections locales, c'est la direction provinciale de l'ANC qui détermine qui va être candidat dans quelle municipalité. Ce qui fait que ça ne vient pas des municipalités elles-mêmes et qu'il y a des émeutes, parfois localement, contre l'apparatchik qui a été désigné.
Et c'est vrai aussi pour l'ANC. Pour nominer leur candidat à la présidence, c'est à l'intérieur de l'ANC qu'ils votent et ce n'est pas la population en général qui choisit le
Oui,
candidat.
mais alors là, franchement, l'Afrique du Sud a un véritable système démocratique. Je suis absolument ferme là-dessus. À l'intérieur du parti, les négociations sont très dures, les groupes se combattent ardemment et les élections, qu'on le veuille ou non, donnent un résultat écrasant pour l'ANC puisque l'ANC, aux premières élections démocratiques, a fait 63%, aux suivantes 65%. Là, ces derniers temps, elle est retombée à 57%. Qui, en Occident, quel parti fait 57% à une élection législative? Alors ensuite, on sait que c'est le chef du parti qui sera élu président de la République, mais ça, c'est une donnée que l'on sait. Donc, je suis plein d'admiration pour le système sud-africain, même si je déplore qu'effectivement, à la tête du parti, on n'a pas toujours élu quelqu'un de scrupuleusement honnête. Mais il est parti, celui-là. Oui.
One of your poetry, if you
Oui, recommencer, c'est bien.
Hello, thank you for everything. And you have shown us a little book that you wrote of poetry. And I would like to hear one of your poems, if you agree to read for us. And if nobody wants to ask something about politics.
Which one, dear God?
I don't know what you prefer. Thank you.
Je précise que j'ai rencontré Sindiwe Magona lors d'une réunion de poésie organisée par Brayton Breitenbach. Donc, je sais que c'est un thème qui la touche beaucoup. Et je vous remercie de cette intervention.
How much time do we have? Oh. If we didn't have a lot of time, I was going to stand and read the poem. But since we have a lot of time, I'm going to sit. This is a poem I rather like. It's a fun poem. I wrote it for the mother-in-law of my Italian publishing. The mother-in-law and I like one another very much. She knows one word of English. Hello. And I know no Italian either. Buongiorno and goodbye, addio. Adios? No, not adios. Addio. Anyway, and then Maria I'm in Italy, and Maria has a big birthday, 80th birthday. And Maria wants me to come to her birthday. Her family is coming, and I think I'm going to be so bored in this birthday party because everybody's going to blah, 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 and I will hear nothing. So I say to Ricardo, please, Ricardo, and the wife, please, I don't want to go. Leave me here in your house and go. But for Maria, I write a poem and say, this is my excuse. I couldn't come because I was writing this poem. She will, So I wrote a poem for Maria. If I can find it, page 18.
By the way, Sindiwe, would you have a poem in isiXhosa?
There's one I translated here.
Fine.
Okay.
So afterwards,
Okay.
please.
For Maria. For decades, I learned to wipe my nose, wipe my feet before entering the house after a walk in the rain or on snow. The second decade, I learned to put on lipstick, look in the mirror before leaving the house, look at a boy without letting him know I was looking, look like a lady without letting Mama know I felt all womanish inside. The third decade, I learned to wipe other people's noses and love it. I learned to put another's interest before mine. Love and duty were but two sides of the same coin. Complain? Me? What did I have to complain about? I was fulfilled, grown up, married with children and all. A roof over my head, a boiling pot on the stove, and a man who told me at least twice a day he worshipped the ground I walked on. Yes, sometimes very late at night, he reminded me how much he loved me. Very, very, very late at night, when the children were fast asleep, when all the dishes were sparkling clean, when the floor was swept free of all toys, dusted and wiped free of meddlesome footprints. Yes, sometimes late at night, he reminded me for the third time that day how much he loved me. The fourth decade, I watched my own children, my daughters, make goo-goo eyes at boys when they thought my eyes were closed, my ears deaf as stone. They whispered tingly secrets, made subtly suggestive gestures. Amused, I watched it, although inside I sighed. Amused to see the pattern repeat itself. Oh my God, embarrassed, I remembered my own naive assumption of my mother's blindness. The fifth decade, there was no denying it. My children were grown. Yes, they were my children, but they were definitely no longer children. Did this mean I was old? How could it be? When had that happened? I was just discovering my essence, discovering joyful living, sans fear of pregnancy, sin or ridicule. It was in such ecstatic sensuousness I entered the sixth decade. Let no one misguide you. The 50s are for fleshly fulfillment, sinful delight, and sprightly goings on. Now at last, I knew all there was to know about life. I'd even made it from scratch myself. Gave it flesh, blood, and bone, knit it and bled it into being, nurtured it into healthy maturity. The seventh decade, I learned to live with loss. A huge hole came to live in my heart, but I learned to understand this. The loss is as big as the love. I suffer greatly, for I have greatly loved. I am grateful for the love that was mine. I suffer, but I could not have asked for less. The eighth decade, I learned to live with fewer and fewer friends, fewer and fewer visits from my children as their own lives grew fuller and fuller. I love the four walls I call home. I love the skin that houses the bones I call my body. I love the people who a long time ago were my children. I look at their clean noses and now I have lived a good life. Look, just look. how they truly no longer need me. For the 9th decade, I will learn the meaning of the hours. For time is short, each hour more precious, therefore. The journey is definitely longer behind me. The road ahead looks short indeed, but my heart leaps with joy as I see footsteps painted a bright and joyful gold. Without a doubt, I know those are the footsteps love has made. Mine has been a long life, rich in experience. But now, looking back, I see all those brilliant moments in my life are moments of loving, of giving to others. These are moments when I transcended the self and its imperious demands, when I was for another whatever it was they needed to go one step forward. Wife, friend, mother, neighbor, daughter, sister, or stranger. Yes, I can see I have been a good citizen, a decent human being. Now I am 80 years old. I hope I still have time enough to catch up. Pass me that damn bottle of wine, will you? Thank you. Thank you. Then Riccardo's wife translated the poem to Italian and read it for Maria. And I hear she liked it so much she cried.
So since we are here in the very Institute for Languages all over the world, could you read a passage of your poem in Isikosa?
I have a very short, 8 lines, I think, poem that I use for when I make appearances with, especially with children, and I'll read it.
Juste, ici, on n'enseigne pas de langue d'Afrique du Sud, mais pendant une année, l'ambassade de France a envoyé un assistant en zoulou. Et donc, il y a eu une initiation au zoulou, mais ça remonte maintenant à une quinzaine d'années. Un peu dommage.
In English, it's called being, because it pleases our Maker. We have no choice in the fashion of our making. The sentence for our being is choice in the manner of our living. In Xhosa, ukukhetha. Kuba ethandile umdali wethu, akukho kuthi ukuzikhethela. Ukuba sozalwa njani na ngubani na. Isigwebo sethu ngobukho bethu kukukhetha indlela esiphila ngayo.
Omdat ons maker dit verkies, sê ons nie hoe ons is. Die straf van ons leven lê in hoe ons besluit om die leven te lei. C'est de l'Afrikaans.
Makkelijk.
Makkelijk.
Thank you.
Who translated in Afrikaans?
I did with help. Ja. Ik praat een beetje Afrikaans. Ik heb Afrikaans geleerd in school. Ik moest dat leren.
Elle devait apprendre l'Afrikaans. À l'époque, c'était obligatoire. À l'époque, il y avait 2 langues officielles. Maintenant, il y en a 11. Ça rend les choses plus difficiles.
We are done.
Une question, une intervention? Sarah, vous voulez dire quelque chose?
Jusque c'est toujours un grand plaisir d'entendre Sindiwe lire sa propre poésie et sa prose. Elle a une façon extraordinaire de présenter ses textes, donc je suis toujours subjuguée par elle.
Hier, vous avez parlé avec Christiane Taubira. Elle aussi est un grand poète. Vous avez traité de la poésie hier ?
Non, enfin, que je sache, Madame Taubira n'écrit pas de poésie. Elle adore la poésie.
Si, elle en écrit, j'ai entendu.
Quelques poèmes.
Quelques poèmes.
Oui. Mais on n'a pas parlé hier de poésie, on a vraiment parlé de leur vie en tant que jeune femme et membre de grandes familles, de familles modestes, et des ressemblances, des difficultés qu'elles ont connues et comment elles sont arrivées à où elles sont aujourd'hui.
Excusez-moi, nous avons une question qui vient du chat YouTube, si vous voulez l'accepter.
Oui, très bien.
La question c'est « How do we unlearn violence ?» Si vous voulez bien la reprendre dans un micro, s'il vous plaît.
How do we unlearn violence?
This would take, thank you for the question, this would take psychologists and people like that. But I believe that anybody can unlearn what they have learned. Unlearning is a process. You have to want or be made to want to unlearn it. And so violence, for me, seems to be a reaction, an internal reaction to whatever has happened or has not happened in your life. Are you coping? Are you not coping? And everything starts inside. Nothing starts because other people did this and that. It's your reaction. And unless you are made aware that violence solves nothing, it's like anger, it's like jealousy. Emotions solve nothing. It's you working on you that will solve or lead to a better you. If everybody could find a way or be made, led, nurtured into a situation where they wanted to, people have to want to improve. Nobody improves because I want them to improve or someone else wants them to improve. But the more people see that it is possible to become a better person, the more people will want to become that kind of person. It's a question of will, for instance, in South Africa, will we ever admit to the nation we have become? The people who are doing this violence to the children they are carrying didn't teach this to themselves. This is why I wrote the book. This is something society, because eventually I had to ask the question, okay, I'm angry at this young woman, I'm angry at her mother, I'm angry at her teachers, I'm angry at whoever surrounds her. But then eventually I had to realize that the people who didn't help her, who didn't, I'm one of those. It's the whole village, and until we take responsibility for the violence in the country and all the other social ills, we will never move away. We will never end violence. The first step to working towards healing is admission and awareness of what it is we have become. There's a lot of blah, blah, blah in South Africa. We'll end this. But until we are honest and earnest about it, it will not end. The violence in South Africa is so widespread. People would be asked, when I walk, this morning I was taking a walk with a friend. I call you friend, I'm sorry. And I went like this, freedom. Maybe she did not understand. I don't walk like that in South Africa. If you see an empty space, you look around and you try to disappear because you don't want to be isolated and be where there is nobody else, because one person will find you and they will make you their business and you end up dead or raped or robbed or all of the above. So violence can only be ended by an awareness, an admission, and a desire, and the hard work of transformation, which has not happened. Until more and more people are transformed, there won't be an end to violence in South Africa. At least that's my theory, but it's not from any book. It's just from observation. We need to work on ourselves, all of us, at the anger we harbor. I hope that answers some of your questions.
D'autres questions venant de loin ou de la salle?
Or a comment.
Ou un commentaire, en effet. Mais dans ce cas-là, on peut peut-être arrêter la rencontre en remerciant grandement Sindiwe Magona pour sa venue, pour ses propos très directs, pour sa chaleur communicative.
Thank you. Merci,
Et
merci beaucoup.
je vais terminer par une citation, non pas de vous, mais de votre mère, qui a dit « Le seul mari qui ne vous quittera pas, c'est votre diplôme ». C'est effectivement très juste. Merci à tous.
Et pour nous, ce sont ces textes à elle qui ne nous quittent jamais.
Très bien.
Merci. Il y a des livres au fond de la salle, si jamais vous voulez...